views expressed and the opinions given by the individual hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Paramania, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
You are listening to Paramania Radio.
Howdy, partners. Welcome to the Haunted Chronicles, episode 114. Last week's guest was Alexandra Holzer, and if you missed it, that's available on the on-demand section. Tonight's guest is not home right now, and we're going to call him in a second. Tonight's guest is Edwin Becker. He's a musician and author who is not waiting patiently in the Haunted Chronicles green room at the moment. And he purchased an extremely haunted house in 1970. We may or may not hear about it, which became the subject of his book, True Haunting. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you to all who shared tonight's event page, and we're going to do this right now. Thank you to Corey, Brenda, Valerie, Jennifer, Joe, Tiffany, Paul, David, B.N. Hank, Sprinkles, Chad, Maggie, Mama D, Rick, Frankie, Adrian, Mary, Brock, Leanne, Eric, Tracy, Lisa, Roxanne, Damien, Brian, Colin, and the following groups: Paramania Radio, UFOs, Paranormal and Government Agendas, new sponsor; Big Bear Ghost Seekers, Appalachian UFO Research Society, new sponsor with Junebug; On the Fringe with Art Bell and Heather Wade, Midnight in the Desert page, and the Independent Paranormal Research Circle, and Richie in the Pharmacy. Thank you. This episode is brought to you by Chock full of Nuts. Chock full of Nuts is that heavenly coffee, better coffee millionaires' money can't buy. Is that an awkward sentence or what? I am Mr. Haunted, joined by Jennifer, Baby Soft Running, and the baby-faced assassin, Brock Burrows. Hey, fellas!
YOLO!
Hey, YOLOs.
YOLO, YOLO. I missed you guys last week.
Yes, how was your graduation?
Yes.
It was great. It was great. It was very, of course, the tears, and you're just so proud of your kids when they accomplish these big moments. That was great. Thank you for asking.
And Jennifer's son Wyatt graduated from, was it USC last week?
Yeah.
And we gave him a big shout.
Oh, thank you. A little brainiac, yeah.
Well,
I wish I had some of those brains when I was in school. But thank God they do.
I hear you.
this might turn into a cool stories show.
Right?
Yeah.
It may.
How are you guys doing?
Well, I'm doing really well. It's been an interesting week over here. I've been just been befallen with muscle spasms, so I've been, just kind of laying low and trying to get that taken care of. But other than that, a good week for me. How about you, Brad?
It's been a busy week, but I switched to the dark side, and I went with cable modem internet today, and they came out and hooked me up. So, being that if I lived a mile down the road in Blacksburg, I could have got with Comcast, which would have been cheaper, but with the monopoly that I'm with here in Christiansburg, I'm paying a huge price for speed that I shouldn't be paying that high price for. But still, it's more faster than I had, and I think it's going to be more stable and, no more drops during radio shows. But besides that, pretty good.
With that Monopoly,
Mm-hmm.
do you use the thimble, the little dog, or the iron?
I use the car, actually.
Oh, the little car, okay.
Yeah. That's my favorite.
Good. We're going to call Edwin.
I have no idea what you guys
Well,
are
hold on.
doing, but
Jimmy,
Yeah.
Jimmy, we got to ask you before we call. How are you?
I don't have anything prepared, but with the help of Heidi Haunted, I am happier than a baby Himalayan mountain goat jumping to and fro across the dell, all willy-nilly. And I don't know what a dell is, but there's a song about a farmer in the dell, so I'm assuming it's some sort of, I don't know, a house or parcel of land. I don't know, but I'm happy. Yeah. Or the dell, the singer. Singer of Skyfall. Which we're going to play repeatedly 5 times for you guys. Up next.
Wait. A dell is a small valley, usually among trees.
Yeah, that's where I'm jumping around.
oh,
I'm
That's
jumping
from
around
Dr.
in a
Dave.
you're pretty.
small valley,
You're pretty.
usually amongst trees.
Yeah. Yeah, but you got to tell us though really quick, because you've had some excitement at your house.
You know what? This week
Today.
I couldn't think of anything interesting. I mean, last week topping the singing out my back window. What song was I singing?
Oh, God, what were you singing? And the neighbor saw you, and you were.
Yeah.
It wasn't Brady Bunch.
Listeners, help me out here. Anyway, I was singing a song out the back window. I can't remember what it is. Anyways, nothing
You sound
happened.
just like her.
Nothing happened like that. Thank you. And so I really didn't have anything to say until just a couple hours ago. A little baby possum, and I have it with pictures and video. A little baby possum was on my deck in the corner, like all forlorn, and I gave him bread. Last week we had the raccoon.
Yeah.
I gave him bread. I gave him a bowl of water, and I gave him. He ate it, and I was like a foot away from him. And then he looked like he wanted more, so I gave him some corn on the cob, and he enjoyed that. And then he hung out for a little bit, and then he jumped off and went underneath. So I have a new pet.
Is he hiding? He's hiding now.
Yeah,
Eating the beer?
he's relaxing. I don't have any beers.
Oh.
I would have if he asked for one.
Tequila.
He's
something.
playing possum. See, that's where that comes from.
Yes. Hey, you do know that, like, possums are kind of incredible because they eat ticks and they eat spiders, I think. So this little baby could keep you tick-free and
Save a life.
help your...
So we don't need to get the tick medicine for Jimmy anymore right now.
Well, you got a lot of ticks up in the forest by you, right? Right in the woods up in Connecticut and in that area. So love that little baby.
I got the. I'm on the National Possum Society network right now,
Ooh,
and
okay.
and I'm trying to see what they eat, so I can take care of him.
Well, see, we used to have possums that come up on our porch when we were little, like Dave said, after the cat food. And and one time, one was just sitting there, and I went to go try to kick it off the porch. Those things are rock solid, dude.
Ooh.
Yeah, they are nothing. They're not to be messed with. And I mean, it barely moved. Oh yeah.
Yeah, they hiss at you. My dog one night was going crazy years ago, and I let her out, and it was at night, and she was chasing this huge possum, and it scared me because I thought, oh my God, what if it attacked her? So I went and grabbed the dog, and this thing, I mean, they can be very mean. I don't think they bite though, do they? I mean, I think that then they'll play dead, right? And then, I don't know. I know nothing about, what am I talking about? I know nothing about possums, except that they eat ticks, and they scared my dog. There you go.
That's all you need to
Name
know.
on there.
They're
Yeah,
creepy looking when they cross the street at night. When they are
Yeah.
their eyes glow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna try our guest. We're gonna see if he's in the green room yet.
Yeah, I want to hear his story. It's quite incredible.
Hello?
Edwin!
Hey.
How are you?
Hello?
Edwin!
Yes.
How are you?
Good. Who are you?
This is Jimmy from the Haunted Chronicles show.
You are that.
Hi, Jimmy.
You've won a guest appearance tonight. Our
What did I
guest
win?
tonight-
A guest appearance? A guest appearance.
Our guest tonight is a professional musician, radio personality, and best-selling author of Death List, Banished, and True Haunting 1 and 2, and the owner of a home that was the first ever televised exorcism on NBC in 1971, Edwin Becker. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're most welcome.
And last night I knew I was babbling to you. It was late, and I work nights, so I was a little punchy. But I was trying to explain that we do scary movie celebrity birthdays, and if you wanted to join us in playing that game, and then we'll get to your story if you'd like. These are celebrities that have birthdays this week, and you're going to guess how old they are. Ready?
All right. Am I ready?
Yes, you are.
We're on the air?
We're on the air. Hi, Edwin. This is Jennifer. How are you?
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Brock.
Hi, Brock. Happy Friday.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
too.
My dog just barked a happy Friday, too.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll guess how old they are.
Okay.
What's your dog's name?
Starlet.
Oh.
Our cat's Twilight. They're the
Aw.
same family. Okay. Our first celebrity birthday is Jamie Kennedy, who was in the TV series The Ghost Whisperer, Reaper, Scream 1, 2, and 3. Jamie Kennedy. He's also in the Son of the Mask.
Right.
I'm going to guess and say he's about 44.
Good guess.
Jennifer?
I'm going to say 47.
I'm going to go up one on Edwin and say 45.
Okay.
He's 45 now. We'll be 46 next week.
Well, we didn't do too bad on that one.
Yeah,
No,
you know.
not bad at all.
Yeah.
He dinged us instead of bossed us. Wow.
Good mood.
Ah,
Softer side,
Thanks, Doctor.
softer side of Dave.
Oh,
I just gave Dave a little wave in the control room there. Stevie Nicks, singer, songwriter, and member of Fleetwood Mac, who starred in the TV series American Horror Story.
Stevie Nicks, right, from the band?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's going to be more toward my age group, so she's going to be around 62, 63.
I'm going to say 62. I'm going to agree with Edwin.
I think she's higher.
Ooh.
I hate to do this to her because she listens to the show. 68.
Well, Stevie Nicks was a frequent listener. We lost her now. No, she is 68.
Oh, wow.
Wow, we're two.
Wow.
Teamwork.
Yes.
Well, see, but you know what? She'll like Edwin and I a lot more.
Well, she don't look a day over 64, so...
Good job, Bob.
Brock, they said your fast internet is helping you win. He switched cable providers. This one's been in the paper and news a lot, so you guys might have heard about this one. Cher has a birthday today. Singer, actress for Mermaids, Moonstruck, Mask, and Witches of Eastwick. Cher.
Yeah, she's going to be about 72. I'm going to say 72.
72. Okay, wow. I'm going to say 75.
You just lost Cher as a listener. You dropped another one.
I know.
We're good at that. I'm going to agree. I'm going to say 72.
Cher is 70 today.
Ouch.
Ooh.
Yeah, we
Right
lost
there.
her.
I am old.
She's my age.
When the Sonny and
Good morning, young Dylan. Anybody else listening, write something in there. It's the only way I could interact.
I mean, came out of the curtain. Okay. Our guest tonight, as I just said, is a author, best-selling author, musician, radio. Edwin.
Yes, sir.
For people that don't know any of your story, it started. Unless you want to go before. You know what? Actually, did anything when you were 24 years old, you purchased a home?
Yeah, and it was kind of in desperation. My wife was pregnant. Didn't have the baby yet, but our landlady had given us the boot. She basically said, "You're out," and you could do that in those years. So apartment owner could say no kids, no pets, working couple only, things like that. And I was able to wangle myself into getting an old, dilapidated building, 2-flat building, and I bought it, and that was the story. It's ugly. It was ugly at the time, but I had a great, imagination. I thought I could fix it up anyway, and I wasn't aware. I was kind of an ignorant person because I grew up in the inner city.
Well, you're gonna like this one, bucko.
Very turbulent. The feelings that I felt when I first toured the building, and I did it myself without my wife, I had felt before. So you can't beat old buildings in Chicago. People often ask me that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in neighborhoods where these buildings are 100 years old, and they used to have funerals in the front room, you kind of tell me which one is without spirits. Now, they may not have active spirits or malevolent spirits, but, try to pick some. When you're a city like Chicago, you don't question whether someone died there or not. You know that they did.
Right.
It's an automatic, and it's not a frightening thing. And the sensations I felt, as far as goosebumps and chills, and the change in the temperature, I actually thought was like a benefit because we were on the second. I figured we'd live on the second floor, rent the first floor, and it was actually cool in certain rooms on the second floor, and I thought that was a great thing.
Right.
Now, when my wife toured it with me, women are far more sensitive than men. I mean, there is no doubt about that. And my wife was very sensitive, so she knew instantly, and I was this denier, okay? I didn't believe in ghosts. I was very religious. I was Catholic, but ghosts don't enter into religion, other than the Holy Ghost.
As soon as you moved in, how quickly did she notice things going on, or things that were not normal?
Pretty much, she noticed it the first day she moved in. I kind of knew. I started to learn a little bit about the people that lived there and not the history of the building. I don't pay a lot of attention to history. I think it's interesting, but I know ghosts, and ghosts lie. So, you can think if you're an investigator, you can think you're talking to little Johnny or somebody. Right. You don't know who the hell you're talking to. Because when you open up a line of communication, it's going to be the strongest spirit on the other side that's going to come at you. And they're not going to come at you and say, boo, I'm going to kill you. They're going to be seductive. They're going to answer your questions. They're going to want to enter into your life. So I knew a little bit about the building. I did not believe it was haunted. I was a typical male. I mean, my book has generated, literally thousands of emails and letters from people all over the world. And the one thing that's a common denominator is these spirits tend, especially where you have a couple, husband and wife, partners, whatever, they tend to work on one and not on the other. Or if there's children, they'll work on the children and not on the adults.
Yeah.
And this creates a friction and emotion. Marcia would say this or that happened, and Ed the denier would say, nah, that's a bunch of bunk. Because as a male, I think all of us, as males, you'll have to agree with me, we don't believe that anything can be within our domain that we can't control. You just don't, whether it's a house, apartment, or tent. As males, we kind of feel like we control this space.
Yeah.
And as a young man, I was pretty bullheaded about that I control the space. And I made my wife suffer quite a bit until I was finally faced with things that I couldn't deny.
And before you go on...
I'm sorry?
What was the first thing that really made you turn around, that you went, okay, this is not going okay here?
There were a couple things. They did make me turn around because spirits, if spirits were scary, if ghosts were real scary, all the ghost books would be 1 or 2 pages. Because basically what happens, I hate to read a nonfiction story where the author writes horrified or terrified. Because horrified or terrified means that your flight or fight instinct kicked in.
Right.
And it only goes to flight, so you're going to get the hell out of there, all right? And you don't come back.
Right.
So what ghosts do is they do other things, like they toyed with me in the bathtub plug. I'd start my bath water in the morning, they'd pull the plug and wrap it around the faucet. I'd go in there, the tub would be empty, and I'd get angry. And eventually what I did is I was of the mindset that whatever they did, I would start to counter. So I put in a whole new plug with a lever, and I tightened it so it was hard to put down.
Uh-huh.
I've solved that problem. If they opened the cabinet door and it wouldn't close, I'd nail a sucker shut. Now, I thought I could beat them because it was my domain, and it just wasn't true, okay? What I did everything wrong. So when people, and I get correspondence from experts all over the world telling me that when they read the book, because once you interfere with what they're doing, their activity, it'll generate a second activity.
Oh.
So when people write me and they say, the ghost opens my closet door at night, I'll close it and go to bed, and when I wake up in the morning, it's open. My first question to them is, does it frighten you? If it doesn't frighten you, ignore it. Because sure as heck, if you do something to eliminate that activity, you're going to have your lights flicker, you're going to have something else happen.
Could you go back
Who knows why they do that? I'm sorry?
Sorry. Could you explain the setup of your bathtub that you were talking about that had a chain on it?
Yeah, it was an old clawfoot tub. We didn't have any shower. And it had a drain with a plug, a rubber plug, and the plug had a chain that was attached to the faucet so you couldn't lose the plug or misplace it. And when it first happened, it was also these ghosts are very, very intelligent. It was out to get between my wife and I. It did that quite efficiently. I would start my bath, put the plug in there, set the water temperature, and I'd go in the kitchen and we'd have coffee and just talk in the morning. It was our best time of the day, actually. Then about the time I'd finish my coffee and cigarette, I'd head for the bathtub, and there it would be empty and the water would be going down the drain.
Oh my gosh.
And so it led to me skipping. We lost that half an hour that we really treasured. I wound up sitting in the bathroom watching the plug, all the while denying that we had a ghost, okay? Because my theory was that it had to be, being Chicago and old piping, it had to be sewer gas, was blowing the plug out. But it never did that. And eventually, when it didn't do it, I went back to the kitchen to have coffee again, and it did it again. It would do it whenever I wasn't watching it.
Wow.
So I went and I bought they had, at the time, newer trip levers, where the metal lever that drives the plug up and down. And I bought one of those, replaced the plumbing, put that in, tightened it down so the lever was hard to even push down, and that ended the problem. But then what happened next was it started on the kitchen door. There was a door between the dining room and the kitchen, and all of a sudden that would just open by itself. And if you read the book, again, my wife got very, very frustrated and at my attitude, because I was taking everything so casually. I just said, if you want the door to stay closed, we had a little loop where we had a gate so our daughter couldn't crawl into the other room. I just tied a string to the doorknob, tied it to the little loop, and now the door would try to open and it would vibrate. And me, like a fool, I started taunting the ghost. I had a name for him because when I had bought the building, it was ransacked. And that was probably when I declared war on them and didn't even know it, because I basically called the guy in and said, take everything out of the second floor and just trash it. I don't care, all the furniture, everything. Not knowing that this is their items, I had no respect for their items. That was bad. But when I went to the basement, which is a place where my wife put her foot in the basement door, and she said, I'll never come back here again. There was a shed. They had these, rudimentary, they were real basic, primitive sheds. One was for coal, one was but there was one that had a padlock on it. And knowing that the house was ransacked, it was like, no one opened that padlock. That didn't make any damn sense. So I quickly, I pictured treasure, coins, something really good. You don't know what, it's like finding a box when you're digging. So I broke the hasp, and we got in there. My brother was 10 years younger than I. He was 14 at the time. And all we found was pornography, magazines and pictures. It wasn't pornographic compared to today.
Right.
It was, early nudist magazines and things like that. But what made me address this guy was he put his name on everything. And on the back wall were boxes of shoeboxes. There were just stacks of shoeboxes. And I didn't know what was in there, so we started popping shoeboxes. And there were pictures that he had cut out of magazines, newspapers. It didn't matter whether it was a cartoon or a photograph, but he would cut out a woman's body parts, like baseball cards, and they were banded together and tightly, and the boxes were full of these cutouts that I didn't go through, not even a smidgen of them. But they went back to the 20s. They went back to the 20s or maybe earlier.
Wow.
And right away I said this guy was sick, so my tormentor became, I started calling him by name, and that's the name I called him. In the book I call him Ben. So I'd say Ben this and Ben that, and my wife would get angry with me, don't address it. And finally when I did realize that, okay, we got a problem, I never had fear. I only had fear a couple times where I actually felt a shiver. I was more confused and angry. Anger set in. I was angry at everything. But I went to the Catholic Church and I said,
hey, Seth's Daily Podcast on YouTube.
And the priest came in, and we had, our daughter was christened the same day. So our whole family was there, unlike Paranormal Witness, where they showed, I don't think anybody. We had about 14 people there. The priest came in, he put his stole on, and lifted the holy water dispenser, and it just crumpled.
Wow.
It exploded without sound, so it just crumpled in his hand.
Was it glass?
The brass went, it was brass. And I had never seen, I knew the utensil well, so it was only two pieces. You unscrewed the top, you filled it with holy water, and you screwed it back on. I never saw anything like it, and I was confused. I think my wife may have been the only one. My wife and my aunt may have had, my wife for sure had an inkling of what was going on. The priest certainly had an inkling of what was going on. Because he started shaking, and he picked up the brass and crossed himself, and he didn't finish the house blessing. He started in the living room and he tried to leave. And I grabbed him and I said, you have to bless my daughter's room, which he did do. Mm-hmm. And that room actually became a safe room. But in leaving, I mean, he walked into the closet. He wasn't watching where he was going, and we had two doors, and one that led to the outside stairwell and one that led to the closet. He walked into the closet, and everybody was snickering and, trying to keep from laughing. And I couldn't get him to come back. I mean, we fought. I called him a number of times. Eventually he wouldn't talk to me. I finally went to the rectory. We had words. As a young hothead man, he baited me. And basically said my wife and I should get our heads examined, which is what most people hear. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I just let the air turn blue,
How does he explain that floating container? Did he have any words for that?
He never explained anything. He never explained anything. And in fact, in retrospect, as time passed on, I had the feeling that he had been to that property before. Mm. Because as we walked from the church, we were real jovial and having fun and laughing. It was a great day. And when we approached the building, his mood changed. Of course, we had this crazy woman on the first floor, Myra, and she greeted him with obscenities, which embarrassed the heck out of me. And so I thought maybe that was a factor, but when he entered our apartment, he became very serious. And we were supposed to have lunch first. And he said, no, I'll just do the blessing. So he was already on his way out before he even got in.
And for more information on Edwin's books, you could go to edwinbecker.com or truehaunting.com. And all the information.
Yes, True Haunting. True Haunting has its own site, deserves its own site. It broke the Kindle record. There's no ghost story ever in parapsychology on Kindle that ever had over 600 reviews. And it's averaging almost 5 stars, 4.6. So it deserves its own site.
Wow. Okay, we're unfortunately at halftime. We'll be back with more Haunted Chronicles after this Cher song, I think.
I'm skipping forward. Is Dylan the only one that's hanging in here? Alright, I think we're back. Let's give a shout out to Dylan in the chat room, and maybe Seth.
Life and the afterlife. Join Alan Cox for Understanding Spirit every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, here on the Paramania Radio.
Let's look at Jigglypuff for a minute.
Welcome to the all-new Paramania Radio.
Solo by the book, think like a pirate.
That one was a good one right there.
Welcome back to the Haunted Chronicles. We're talking with Edwin F. Becker. I want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat room. Barry, Brock, Dr. Dave, Frankie C, Frankie B, Indy Dwayne, Maggie Renee, Sprinkles, Tiffany, Tony, BN, Hank, Russell, Desi, Fellini, Lisa M, Randy with Big Bear, Ghost Seekers, Kara E, Victor and Linda. Hope to see you in a couple of weeks. Cheryl, Vicky, and I hope I got everybody. And Paul. Paul's going to sleep. Paul's our executive assistant.
Going to sleep?
Paul lives in England.
Paul?
I know.
Oh.
Wake up,
He
Paul.
never sleeps.
Yeah.
He never sleeps.
Oh.
Poor fella.
He's
So,
like Jimmy, he never sleeps.
we were getting to, we talked about some of the stuff that happened in your home when you first moved in, and you had a priest attempt to bless the house. And then, how did it happen that NBC got involved? And I realized, remember people, this is before there was all these ghost shows and everything, so, like, where do you find help back then?
Yeah.
And how did that happen?
You didn't. I have to credit my wife because at the time a rather prominent psychic lived in Chicago. His name was Joseph DeLuise, and somehow she hooked into him and talked to his secretary. His secretary appealed to him. He sent an investigator to our house. They investigated us personally, and then the home itself, because I guess he didn't want to be pranked. When they found out we were authentic, he came and he spent time there. And what he did was he was a medium and a psychic. He sensed a number of spirits. And I already kind of knew that. I had gone past denial. Now I'm a believer. But I'm in despair because it's like, what do you do?
Damn it.
There is no Ghostbusters in the phone book.
Right.
He sensed a number of spirits, and he sensed one that he thought was not a person on the first floor. He didn't tell us how dark it was, but he called for help, and he called to NBC. His friend, Father Joseph Wood, had a Catholic radio program on NBC. So he called his friend, and he said, "Would you help me?" Well, Father Wood said no, because of the Catholic protocol. They have to go through all kinds of red tape and paperwork, and he said it would take me 3 months to get approval. He recommended an Anglican priest, William Darrell Davis. And the only reason that Joseph DeLuise wanted a priest is because he felt that there was something there he could not handle. Well, he brought in, Darrell Davis was a wonderful man. They're both wonderful men. Joseph stayed friends until
Hey, Stephen.
2008. But Darrell Davis was an exorcist. And, people talk about demons and all this stuff. There are no, demons don't inhabit inanimate objects. So, your demonic doll's bunk. Okay, I got a demonic frying pan, it's a bunch of bunk. They need a soul to take to hell. And Darrell Davis, as an exorcist, sensed something on the first floor, but he had nothing to confront. Now, I didn't know this in those years, so all I sensed was confusion. And he did not approve of the psychic going into a medium trance because he was afraid that he'd get possessed. So if you were to watch the clip on YouTube of the first exorcism,
Randy!
I think it's also under True Haunting, you'll see they sat across from each other, and Joseph did go into a trance. He did talk to a spirit. It was very, very creepy. But William Darrell Davis would sit there in a very James Earl Jones voice and bark, "Come back, come back. Don't go no further." He was afraid that Joseph would get possessed. And the whole thing was a failure. I mean, you cannot exorcise a house. It was a failure. And the same with ghosts. I mean, with ghosts, unless you solve their problem and you know specifically what it is and who they are, that ghost ain't going anywhere. Now, you've got 1,000 priests in England and Scotland and that have tried, cleaning the castles, and they can't do it. So the best thing to do with a ghost, I tell people, protect your bedroom. That's your sanctuary. That's where your subconscious is going to be unprotected. And bless your house, but leave an area that's unblessed where whatever it is can go. And I've got probably 2,000 letters where I tell people that some of them are, if the activity is too much, I refer them to people who are qualified that I know. Most times, if it's an occurrence, I tell them just to ignore it.
I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if it was that exact day, but he did something with a cross and a mirror that I never saw done before.
Yeah, I saw that too. So
Can you tell us what it,
He had a crucifix and a mirror, and the cross, of course, was to represent God. But the mirror was to show the spirit that they're not real, that they have no reflection.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he gave me my initial wealth of education. But a lot of times spirits do not know that they're dead. They just don't know it.
Right.
And so what he calls the spirit to him, and then he shows it. He's trying to guide it to the light in his own way. And, before all this stuff became cliche. He was not successful, so afterward he kind of held our hand. He tempered my behavior. He told I went from an angry young man who antagonized these things to being more compassionate and more spiritual, and filling the house with icons of my belief, which did settle things down a bit. But I probably... I'm sorry? No. No. In fact, that's something I always kid investigators about, because they dress up with their black clothes and their night goggles and stuff. And actually, the calmest time in our house was sometime.
Hey, Connie Sue.
Certainly, sometime before midnight and to about 5 in the morning. So go and I could give you. I'm writing a book now based on my analysis of letters that I've gotten, thousands, literally. I'm lumping them into groups. So you have your touchings, you have your doors opening, you have your footsteps, you have your audible sounds, you have all these things. They just continue and they go on, but typically they're during the daytime. They're the one thing that seems to be common at night are footsteps. And that's whether it's in the Philippines or whether it's in America or Canada. Footsteps in the hall at night. Now, I don't know why.
Did you ever hear voices there?
But again, I'm sorry?
Did you ever hear voices there?
Oh, yeah.
And what do they say? What kind of voices do they have?
Yeah, no, I tried to record them a number of times. One was we would hear, and our tenants would hear, arguing on the back porch. It was a man and a woman. They were angry and emotional, and they'd be arguing. And you could hear them, and sometimes you could make out words. I mean, clear words like "son of a bitch," and stuff like that. The minute I'd go to the back door, initially we heard them, and because Chicago is so, congested and you're close proximity to all the other buildings and houses, I thought it was neighbors. But then I'd go to the porch and I'd open the back door and it would stop instantly.
Wow.
I was going to ask you about tenants on the first floor. So you did have people, you did rent the first floor out, and they had experiences as well, correct?
Yeah, and I didn't even know the whole story until we filmed Paranormal Witness, because they left after about 8 months because of the activity. And my wife and I assumed that they went on to, happily ever after.
Uh-huh.
As it turned out, it tore their marriage up. They wound up getting a divorce, and 40-some years later, him and I are sitting on the set of Paranormal Witness, and he's telling me the story. He knocked me out of my chair, all the activity that they experienced. And yeah, they heard the voices. Initially, they thought it was Marcia and I having big arguments.
Right.
And the only other audible sound we heard was actually the day after the exorcism, the morning after, about 5 o'clock in the morning. And they allowed me to tape it, so I have a sound tape of the whole exorcism, which is kind of neat, because there are some extraneous sounds that we didn't hear. But 5 o'clock in the morning, we hear a wailing and just a crying of anguish. I mean, it was like a woman at the peak of anguish, just screaming and crying. And it woke me up, and I whispered to Marcia, I said, "Do you hear that?" And she said, "Yes." And I got up slowly to turn on my tape recorder. And as soon as I hit the red button, it stopped. But I had goosebumps. It was like, I had goosebumps for a number of reasons. One is, ghosts tend to do the same thing over and over and over. I imagined that if this started, and, I was hoping that wasn't going to be my alarm every morning. Screaming and crying of anguish. So it scared me for that reason. But we had something there that I debate to this day. If you read my book, then you know it affected my sister. My sister was diagnosed. I believe in my heart she was possessed. She was totally possessed.
Wow.
We watched her deteriorate. She loved her family. She went down this road, and of course, when we took her to people, when we could talk her into going to somewhere to get help, and she went to a shrink or a psychologist, they immediately said schizophrenia. When she went to a medical doctor, they said she's having seizures, she's epileptic. There's no synergy between spiritual and physical help, which is a crime.
Yeah.
Okay, because she was not physically ailing at all. It was all mental, and in the end, she separated herself from our whole family, from her own children. She wound up as a unidentified body in Cook County morgue.
Oh gosh, that's
Yes, I mean,
I'm so sorry.
but she had been arrested, so they got her fingerprints. After about 3 weeks, they took her fingerprints, and they were able to find a member of the family, and we got her a proper burial. And people don't appreciate, I get into it with investigators all the time because 90% of these ghosts are benign. But that 10% is going to get you. And you won't even know it. It's not like they grab you by the collar and drag you away. They attach themselves to your mind. And you start to deteriorate. All of a sudden your attitude becomes negative. You don't have the same interests. You may not start to get along with people. I could tell you some real stories of people that I know in the last 5 years that have gone down this road, and I warn them that what you're going into, men and women have a tendency to have a false bravado, simply because it's like shadow boxing. You can box with something that's invisible. You're always going to win. No problem. You ain't going to get hit back. Then you get into the ring, and guess what? You get punched right in the face, and it ain't so good. People, if you can see what the hell you're confronting, you might not be so brave.
Mm.
And for some reason, like if I said, have any of you been an investigator?
Yes.
Okay.
We all have
if I said to you, the heck with investigating ghosts. They're boring. You can't see them. Let's go investigate the habits of a crack house. Let's go take a walk inside a crack house and interview some of those people. How many of you would go with me?
I'll stay home.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can get really hurt physically, which kind of tells me that when most investigators underestimate the power of the spirit. Because the spirit will not hurt you as far as hit you. It will attach itself to your mind. And it's like I tell everybody, I really get into it with people who mess with Ouija boards and crystal balls. If I were at a prison and I stood on top of the outside wall and I took my cell phone and threw it out in the yard and said, anybody who gets it can use it, who would have that cell phone? The biggest, meanest dude in the yard. Okay, now when you get on a Ouija board, if you're able to make a connection, who do you think comes at you?
Right, the biggest, the strongest, right?
It's the biggest, strongest spirit on the other side.
Right.
And they are not going to... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to give your website out another time. TrueHaunting.com and EdwinBecker.com. The books are available. There's so much more to this story, and we could do another hour easy. But make sure to check out those websites: TrueHaunting.com and EdwinBecker.com. And I believe you have a new book coming out. But the question I would definitely want to ask before you leave is: did the activity cease after you left that home, or is it still going on there?
No, it still has a checkered history, and it's been foreclosed. I think it's vacant right now, if you want to buy it.
So it's still there.
Yes, it's still there. And the person I gave it to had a run of bad luck. It's got a bad history.
And you gave it away.
Been back? Yeah, you gave it away. Have you ever been back?
No. I did pass it once with the car. My wife got upset. Just being in the neighborhood, she was afraid that I was going to say, let's go inside.
Yeah.
But no, I've never been back, and I'm in Missouri now, so, I can only see it on Google, and I don't really care to look at it.
Yeah.
I can't even watch that YouTube video.
Nadine and Herbie!
I can smell the room, it gives me PTSD.
Wow.
So can you tell us about your new book? You explained it already. Sorry. It's going to be about more of the what activities happened and more detail.
Yeah, True Haunting 2 is, and then my new book is going to be based on a couple of thousand ghost stories from all over the world, where I analyze them, categorize them.
Wow! Call me up next time you want to do another book.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been a very, very quick hour. So thank you.
Yeah, holy mackerel.
Oh,
thank you for joining us.
Yep,
And
thank you.
we're out of time. Edwin Becker, EdwinBecker.com and TrueHaunting.com. See you next week. Good night, fellas. Good night, Brock. Good night, Dave. Good night, Edwin.
Good night.
God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.